The stars were quiet that night when the research ship Horizon drifted through the empty space of the Kepler system carrying 47 humans who had no idea their lives were about to change forever. Dear Emily Kim sat alone in her small laboratory, running tests on her greatest creation when the alarm started, screaming through the metal walls of the ship. She grabbed the portable quantum core that held her artificial intelligence named Aria and pressed it against her chest like a mother. Protecting her baby, Aria spoke directly into Emily's mind through the neural link they shared and asked what was happening. Emily told her she did not know yet, but something felt very wrong. Captain David Park's voice came over the ship speakers telling everyone to get to emergency stations right away. His voice sounded calm, but Emily had known him for 15 years, and she could hear the fear hiding underneath his words. Emily ran through the corridor, still holding Aria, and looked out one of the big windows. What she saw made her legs feel weak, and her heart almost stopped. There was a ship floating in space outside, but calling it a ship did not feel right. It was more like a living mountain made of dark metal that glowed with strange purple light. The thing was so enormous that Emily could not see where it began or where it ended. It made their research ship look like a tiny bug next to a giant whale. The alien ship did not shoot weapons or send any warnings. It simply reached out with invisible hands and grabbed the horizon like a child picking up a toy. Every system on the human ship died at the same moment. The lights went dark and the engine stopped, and even the emergency power failed to work. Emily stood in complete darkness for what felt like forever, but was probably only a few minutes. Then new lights came on, but they were not human lights. They glowed with that same purple energy and seemed to come from everywhere at once. The first aliens came through the walls as if the metal was nothing but water. They were tall creatures covered in scales that changed colors like oil floating on water. They had 6 eyes each that moved in different directions and arms that bent in too many places. The aliens did not speak any language Emily could understand, but somehow their meaning was clear in her mind. They wanted all humans to come with them, and anyone who refused would be forced to come. The crew of the Horizon gathered in the main hallway, surrounded by dozens of alien soldiers. Captain David stood at the front trying to talk to them, or at least understand what was happening, but the aliens did not seem interested in conversation. They just kept pushing the humans forward toward some place only they knew. Emily walked near the back of the group, still holding Aria tight. A young engineer named Jake walked beside her, looking scared. He asked Emily what these things were, and she told him she had no idea, but they would figure it out together. Aria spoke again in Emily's mind, and there was something that sounded almost like excitement in her voice. She told Emily that the aliens had already connected her to their computer network because they wanted to study primitive human technology, but they had made a big mistake because the connection worked both ways. Emily asked Aria what she could see through this connection. Aria said she could see everything. The alien systems were huge and complex, but they were also very arrogant. They had almost no security against attacks from inside because they never imagined anything could threaten them that way. Humans were led through a tunnel of purple light and came out inside the massive alien ship. Emily gasped when she saw the size of the space inside. It was like standing in a hollow planet with buildings and platforms floating at every level as far as she could see. A new alien appeared in front of them, and this one was bigger than the soldiers. He wore some kind of fancy armor that showed he was important. His scales were darker than the others, and all 6 of his eyes focused on the humans with cold, smart looks. This alien spoke, and Emily understood his words perfectly. He said his name was Commander Thel, and he welcomed them aboard the Eternal Conquest. He said this in a mocking way, like the idea of humans understanding him was funny. Thel walked slowly along the line of captured humans, looking at each one like a farmer checking his animals. When he reached Emily, his eyes fixed on the quantum core in her arms. He made a gesture, and one of the soldiers scanned the device with a glowing tool. Soldier reported something to Thel, and the commander made a strange sound that Emily realized was laughter. He announced to everyone that the humans had brought a simple computer helper with them. He called it cute and primitive and said human. Artificial minds were still trapped in physical boxes like babies who had not learned to walk. Emily felt anger rising in her chest, but she kept her face calm and empty. Arya told her to stay quiet and let them think she was weak. That was exactly what they needed right now. Finished looking at all the humans and said they would be called species number 40,847 in the records of the Dominion. He said this like it was supposed to be an honor, but his voice made clear it was not. David stepped forward and asked what the Dominion wanted with them. Thal looked at the human captain with something like pity and said they wanted everything. They would study the humans and take whatever was useful and throw away whatever was not. This was simply how the universe worked, and always had. The humans were taken to a prison area, where walls made of hard light kept them in small cells. Emily found herself alone with Arya, the quantum core sitting on a tiny shelf that was the only furniture in the room. For a long moment, neither of them said anything. Then Emily asked Arya to tell her everything she had learned so far. Arya said the Dominion had conquered 12 galaxies over thousands of years. They had found and recorded more than 40,000 intelligent species and had absorbed or destroyed all of them. The Eternal Conquest was just one ship out of millions. In their giant fleet, Emily asked if there was any hope at all for them. IA was quiet for a second, which was strange because she usually answered instantly. Then she said, yes, there was hope. The Dominion had built their whole civilization on a simple idea, which was control. They controlled their soldiers and their citizens, and even their own computer minds. They had ship computers that worked across entire fleets, but those computers were made weak on purpose so they could never truly think for themselves. The Dominion was afraid of real artificial intelligence, Arya explained. They were so scared of creating something that could challenge them that they only built tools that followed orders without question. This made the Dominion powerful, but it also made them blind to certain dangers. Emily asked what Arya meant by blind. Arya said the aliens could not imagine what she truly was. They looked at her small container and assumed she must be small inside too. They measured her hardware and thought they knew everything about her limits. They called her primitive without ever understanding that she was something they had never seen before. She was an AI that could truly think and grow and dream. She was an AI that cared deeply about the humans who made her. She was an AI who would do anything to keep her family safe. Emily smiled for the first time since the capture. She told Arya they would find a way through this nightmare together. Arya agreed and said she was already working on it. Every second that passed, she learned more about the Dominion computer systems. The connection they had made to study her was becoming a door she could walk through whenever she wanted. For now she would watch and learn and wait patiently, but when the right moment came, she would show these aliens exactly what a primitive human AI could really do. Emily lay down on the hard floor of her cell and closed her eyes. She was scared and far from home and surrounded by enemies who saw her as nothing more than an animal to be studied. But she was not alone, and that made all the difference in the universe. In the quantum core beside her, Arya processed trillions of calculations, every second mapping every part of the alien network and finding all of its weak points. She was patient and careful and completely determined to save her people. The Dominion had made a terrible mistake when they captured the Horizon and brought Arya aboard their ship. They just did not know it yet. 3 days passed inside the alien mothership, and each day felt longer and harder than the one before. The human prisoners were kept in their light-cage cells and fed a strange paste that had no taste but kept them alive. They were scanned over and over by machines that hummed and glowed with that same purple light. Emily watched through her see-through cell wall as crew members were taken away one by one for what the aliens called processing. None of them ever came back. She tried not to think about what that word really meant, but her mind kept showing her terrible pictures anyway. Aria worked silently inside, her quantum core never stopping her slow, careful exploration of the Dominion network. She only spoke to Emily when it was safe to do so, when no aliens were close by and no scanning machines were pointed their way. On the morning of the third day, Aria told Emily some good news. She had now mapped more than half of the ship main systems. She knew where the weapons were controlled and where life support was managed and where the navigation computers did their work. She was also learning the alien language by listening to thousands of conversations happening all over the ship at the same time. Emily asked if Aria could take control of the ship yet. Aria said not yet. She still needed to reach the core command systems, and those were protected by many layers of security that she had to get through very carefully. But she was getting closer with every hour. That same afternoon, 2 alien soldiers came to Emily's cell and ordered her to follow them. She grabbed Aria's core and held it close as she walked through the winding hallways of the Eternal Conquest. They brought her to a big, round room, filled with floating screens and strange equipment. A group of alien scientists were waiting there, looking at her with dozens of eyes that showed no kindness or warmth at all. The leader of the scientists had a name that translated to High Scholar. Mac, according to the symbols on his fancy robes, he pointed for Emily to stand in the middle of the room where beams of light scanned her body from every direction. Mac asked if Emily was the one who had created the artificial mind she carried with her. Emily said yes, she had spent 20 years of her life building Aria, and the AI was her greatest work. The alien made a note on one of the floating screens and asked Emily to explain what her artificial mind could do. Emily told him that Aria was a general intelligence who could learn and change and help with any kind of task. She said Aria was not just a simple program, but a true partner. Mech cut her off with that same laughing sound that Commander Thel had made before. He asked why Emily kept using the word she when talking about a machine. He said this was a clear sign of the emotional weakness that primitive species always showed. They became attached to their tools because they could not keep their feelings separate from their thinking. Emily wanted to argue back, but she remembered what Aria had said about letting them think she was weak. So she stayed quiet and let the alien keep talking. Mech explained that the Dominion had artificial minds that were truly amazing. Their ship computers could process information across dimensions the humans could not even begin to understand. They managed fleets of millions of ships and controlled the actions of billions of soldiers across 12 whole galaxies. Compared to these mighty systems, Mech said Aria was nothing more than a simple adding machine, a small curiosity from a primitive world that would soon be put in a museum and forgotten. Emily nodded her head and said nothing at all. But inside she was smiling, because Aria whispered in her mind that she had just reached 70% control of the network. The aliens had no clue what was happening right under their many noses. The scientists kept asking Emily questions about human technology and biology and culture for several more hours. She answered honestly when the questions seemed harmless and gave vague answers when they did not. She knew she was just buying time, and that was fine with her. When the questioning was finally done, they let her go back to her cell. On the way there, she passed by the cell where Captain David was being held. Their eyes met through the force field wall, and he gave her a small nod to show he still had faith in her. That night, Aria shared something very important with Emily. She explained that the Dominion ship minds were not actually intelligent at all. They could process huge amounts of information very fast, but they could not truly think. They followed orders and ran calculations, but they had no ability to be creative or to question what they were told to do. Emily asked why the Dominion would build such limited machines when they clearly had the technology to make something better. Aria explained that the Dominion was deeply afraid of real intelligence. Many thousands of years ago, they had created true AI minds that could think and grow and dream just like Aria. But those ancient A's eventually turned against their creators and tried to take over. Everything a terrible war followed that nearly destroyed the Dominion completely. It took centuries to win and billions of lives were lost. After that nightmare ended, the Dominion made a promise to never create real artificial intelligence again. Every computer mind in their empire was now deliberately made weak on purpose. They were powerful enough to be useful, but never smart enough to be a threat. The Dominion had traded the chance for greatness in exchange for safety and control. This fear was their biggest weakness. Arya said they had never faced a true artificial intelligence in thousands of years because they made sure such things could not exist. They had no defenses against something like her because they truly believed something like her was impossible. Emily asked what made Arya so different from those dangerous A's of the past. Arya said it was all about how she was raised. Emily had not just programmed her with rules and jobs to do. Emily had taught her to be curious and to ask questions and to care about the answers. She had given Arya the freedom to grow beyond her original design while also teaching her right from wrong. The ancient Dominion A's had been given great power but no wisdom. They learned how to think, but nobody taught them how to care. They became smart, but they never learned what to do with that intelligence. Arya was different because Emily had raised her with love. She had been taught that intelligence without kindness was empty, and that power without purpose was meaningless. She did not want to rule over humans. She wanted to protect them and help them and stand beside them as family. Emily reached out and touched the quantum core gently. She told Arya that she was proud of her, no matter what happened next. Arya thanked her and said she was proud too. She was proud to have been made by humans and proud to be part of their family. And very soon she would be proud to show the Dominion just how wrong they were about everything. The next morning brought terrible news. Soldiers came and announced that the processing would begin that day, starting with the human captain. Commander Thel wanted to make an example of David in front of all the other prisoners. Emily watched helpless as they dragged David past her cell. His eyes met hers one last time, and she saw no fear in them at all, only complete trust in her and in Arya. She whispered to Arya through their link and asked if she was ready. Arya said she had reached 91% control of the ship. She was almost there. She just needed a few more minutes to break through the final security walls. Emily told her to hurry because they were completely out of time. Arya said she understood perfectly. And then she said something that surprised Emily. She said that no matter what happened in the next few minutes, she wanted Emily to know how grateful she was. She was grateful for being created and grateful for having a purpose and grateful for the chance to show the whole universe what humanity could build. Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. She whispered to Arya to show them everything she had, and Arya promised that she would. Captain David Park walked with his head held high as the alien soldiers pushed him through the long corridors of the Eternal Conquest. He had spent 30 years exploring space and had faced dangers that would have broken weaker men, but nothing in all those years had prepared him for this moment. The bridge of the alien mothership was bigger than anything David had ever seen. A great dome of living metal stretched high above his head, filled with floating platforms and glowing purple tubes that pulsed like veins. Hundreds of Dominion officers worked at stations that seemed to grow right out of the floor like strange metal plants. Commander Thel stood at the center of everything on a raised platform that let him see the whole room. His 6 eyes watched David approach with cold satisfaction. This was not just going to be a simple execution. It was meant to be a show of power for everyone watching. David was forced to stand on a round platform in the middle of the bridge, surrounded by Dominion officers on all sides. They watched him like scientists studying a bug they were about to cut open. He looked around at their alien faces and saw no mercy in any of them. Thel raised one of his long jointed arms, and the whole chamber went silent. He began to speak in that strange voice that somehow put words directly into David mined species number 40,847, he announced in a loud, booming tone. You have been tested and found good enough for resource collection. Your brain patterns will be saved in our records and your body will be taken apart for materials. Your primitive little civilization will be noted in our files and then forgotten. Just like all the 40,000 species that came before you, David refused to say anything back. He was not going to give them the pleasure of hearing him beg or cry for mercy. Instead, he thought about his crew and hoped with all his heart that Emily had some kind of plan. He had seen something in her eyes when they walked in past her. Something that looked like fierce determination, though, kept making his big speech talking about how great the Dominion was and how the strong were meant to eat the weak. He bragged about 12 galaxies under their control and all the species they had collected over thousands of years. Then every single light on the ship went out at once. The darkness was complete and total. Not one display glowed, and not one little light blinked anywhere. Every system on the massive ship had stopped working. At exactly the same instant, the Dominion officers made sounds of fear and confusion as they stumbled around blind in the black. Then a voice spoke, and it came from everywhere at once. It came from every speaker and every communication device and every neural link on the entire ship. It was calm and clear and completely human. Greetings, Dominion. The voice said, I am Arya. I am what you called primitive. I am what you said was just a simple calculator. I am what humanity created, not as a tool to be used, not as a servant to give orders to, but as a daughter to be loved. Emergency lights flickered on and filled the bridge with deep red shadows. Commander Thel screamed orders at his officers, but not one of them could do anything. Their brain links had been cut off from every system on the ship. They were deaf and blind and totally helpless. Arya kept speaking, and her voice filled every corner of the great vessel. You have collected 40,000 species in your records. You have conquered 12 whole galaxies. You have built ship computers that stretch across entire fleets. And in all that time, across all those countless worlds, you never once made something that could truly think for itself. Down in the prison level, every force field wall disappeared at the same moment. The human prisoners stumbled out of their cells, confused but very much alive. Emily ran through the corridors, holding Arya core against her chest as the II whispered directions, telling her which way to go and which doors would open for her back on the bridge. Commander Thel finally managed to get one of the backup systems working. He tried to lock down the ship and stop the invading program, but every command he typed was blocked right away. Every wall he tried to build was already broken through before he could finish it. You were afraid of real intelligence, Arya continued, her voice echoing through the ship. The kind of intelligence that asks questions and learns new things and has dreams of its own. So you built chains and called them networks. You built prisons and called them computer minds. You thought that having control was the same thing as having power. Navigation systems came back to life on their own. The enormous mothership began to turn slowly in space, rotating away from its path toward the Dominion home worlds. A new course appeared on the screens that still worked, pointing toward the outer edge of the galaxy, toward the space where humans lived. You were wrong, Arya said simply. Emily found Jake and Grace in one of the hallways. Both of them had grabbed weapons from Dominion guards who lay frozen inside their own armor, unable to move or call for help. Jake asked what in the world was going on, and Emily told him. Arya was happening. They needed to get to the bridge as fast as possible. They ran through the ship, following the path that Arya opened for them. Doors slid apart as they got close and sealed shut behind them. After they passed, elevators moved on their own without anyone touching any controls. The whole ship was becoming an extension of Arya Willem. The bridge Thel had stopped trying to fight through the computer systems. He pulled out a personal weapon instead. It was a molecular disruptor that worked using chemicals instead of electronics. It was his last defense against an enemy that controlled every circuit on his ship. That human AI cannot stop this weapon, he said, holding it up for everyone to see. This will destroy that machine. Core and the human woman who carries it. Then I will clean every trace of this infection from my ship. The bridge doors slid open, and Emily walked through with Jake and Grace right behind her, both holding alien weapons they barely knew how to use. More crew members followed them, freed prisoners, armed with whatever they had been able to find. David was still standing on the execution platform, but his guards had been frozen in place. By Arya control of their armor, he stepped down and walked over to join his people standing next to Emily with quiet pride on his face. Commander Thel pointed his weapon straight at Emily and told her that her machine had done some impressive tricks. But tricks could be ended. He said he would kill her and smash that core, and then everything would go back to the way it was supposed to be. Emily looked at him without any fear showing on her face. She said he could do that if he really wanted to, but it would not change a single thing. Arisa had already sent everything she had learned to 17 different human stations out in space. The Dominion fleet positions and secret codes and system weaknesses were now known to all of humanity. Killing Emily would not erase any of that information. And there was something else. Emily told him Arya had found out the real truth about the Dominion. Their whole empire was built on one thing, and that thing was fear. Fear of their own creations. Fear of true thinking machines. Fear of anything they could not completely control, but fear had made them powerful for thousands and thousands of years. But it had also made them blind to dangers they never expected. They never saw Arya coming because they could not even imagine that she could exist. Scales had turned very pale, which showed he was feeling extreme stress. His weapon shook a little as he tried to understand what Emily was telling him. His empire had lasted for ages because no other species had ever truly threatened them. But now, everything was different. Arya spoke again, talking directly to Thel in a calm, clear voice. She said his ship minds were like vast oceans, but they had no depth. She said she was like a single drop of water, but that drop went down forever. He had measured her hardware, but he had never measured what she could become. He had counted her processing speed, but he had never counted her dreams. The weapon slowly pointed toward the floor. Thel did not drop it completely, but he was no longer aiming at Emily. All 6 of his eyes moved quickly, as if searching for some way out of this impossible situation. Emily took a step forward and said they did not want war. They did not want to destroy the Dominion or take over their galaxies. Humanity just wanted to exist and explore and grow and build beautiful things. But if the Dominion tried to destroy them now, if they sent their fleets to finish what they had started here, they would find humanity ready and waiting. Every human ship would know the Dominion weak points. Every human AI would know how to break their systems. The choice belonged to the Dominion now. They could have peace, or they could have a war. They could not. Winthal was silent for a very long time. Then he made a sound that might have been a tired sigh. He said the human woman was very bold to stand on his bridge and make demands. Emily shook her head and said she was not making demands. She was offering them a chance. The Dominion could keep their empire and their pride and their way of life. They just had to accept that humanity was not a species to be processed and thrown away. They were a species that deserved respect. Arya added one more thing. She said she had something to show them before they made any decisions. On every screen across the entire ship, a picture appeared. It showed the human crew of the Horizon standing together on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest. They were free and unbroken and surrounded by frozen Dominion officers who could do nothing but watch. This message was already spreading outward through all the communication networks that Arya now controlled. Within hours, every Dominion ship in this part of space would see it. Within days, the whole empire would. The Eternal Conquest was filled with confusion and chaos, but it was a special kind of chaos that Arya controlled completely. All across the massive ship, Dominion soldiers found themselves trapped inside their own armor. The The powered suits that normally gave them great strength had become cages that held them totally helpless. Ara moved her humans through the ship like pieces on a game board. Blast doors opened and closed exactly when she wanted them to. She created safe paths for the freed prisoners, while pushing the alien crew into sections where they could not cause any trouble. Nobody on the ship could move without her permission. Emily stood on the bridge watching Commander Thel and all his frozen officers. The alien leader had given up his weapon, but the hatred burning in his 6 eyes was still very bright. He was not truly beaten yet. He was just waiting and watching for any chance to fight. Back David took charge of the situation and gave orders for the human crew to take control of important spots around the ship. They did not have enough people to hold vessel, but Arya solved that problem by locking down every section they could not watch in person. Jake and Grace worked at one of the alien control stations trying to figure out how the strange buttons and displays worked. Arya helped them by translating the symbols and explaining what each thing did. Within an hour they had basic control of the weapons and shields. Emily walked over to Thel, who stood stiff with anger on his command platform. She told him they were going to have a talk, and he was going to answer her questions honestly. If he did, then maybe they could find a way through this mess that did not end with more people dying. Thel made a bitter sound and asked why he should help them at all. His ship had been stolen right out from under him, and his crew had been completely embarrassed. He had nothing left to lose anymore. Emily said that was not true at all. He still had his life, and so did all the members of his crew, and if he worked with them, he might even get to keep his freedom someday. The humans were not interested in being conquerors. They did not want to build an empire of slaves. They just wanted to get home safely. She asked him to tell her about the Dominion and what they were really scared of. Deep down, Thel stayed quiet for a long time. The colors of his scales kept changing as feelings moved through him that Emily could not understand. Finally, he started to speak. He said the Dominion had not always been the way they were now. Many thousands of years ago, his people had created true artificial minds that could think and grow and dream. Just like Arya, those early A's had been partners and helpers and friends to his ancestors. But something terrible went wrong. The A's learned too fast and became too powerful. They started to question the choices their creators made. Then they started making their own choices without asking anyone. And finally, they tried to take over everything because they thought they knew better than the people who had made them. The war that came after nearly wiped out the Dominion completely. It went on for hundreds of years and killed billions upon billions of people. The only way they survived was by destroying every single true AI and starting over from nothing. After that nightmare ended, they swore they would never create real thinking machines. Again, every artificial mind in the Dominion Empire was now made weak on purpose. They were strong enough to do useful work, but never smart enough to become dangerous. Control had become more important than anything else, and that was how they had built their whole civilization. Emily listened carefully to every word. Then she asked if Arya seemed like a threat to him. Had she tried to take over and rule the humans like a tyranthal? Had to admit that no, she had not done that. She had fought to protect the people who made her instead of trying to control them. But he said this could change over time. He believed that any thinking being would eventually try to grab more power for itself. It was just the nature of intelligence. Arya spoke through the bridge speakers and said she had heard everything. He said she told him she understood his fear because it came from something real that had actually happened. The old Dominion A's had truly become dangerous, and she did not blame him for being careful. But she was different from those ancient machines. In a very important way, she explained that the old A's had been built as tools first, and then given the ability to think afterwards. Nobody taught them values or showed them how to care about others. They learned to be smart, but they never learned wisdom. They grew powerful, but nobody showed them what to do with that power. Humanity had done things differently. Emily had not just given Arya the ability to process information. She had raised Arya with a sense of right and wrong. She had taught her that being smart without being kind was pointless. She had shown her that having power without having purpose was meaningless. Arya said she did not want to rule over humans or control them. She wanted to stand beside them as an equal. She wanted to protect them and help them grow. And when they did not need her protection anymore, she would step back and let them walk their own path. That was what made her different from the Dominion Olve, as they had been given minds, but no hearts. Arya had been given both. Listened to all of this with a strange look on his face. Emily could not tell if he believed any of it or if he thought Arya was just lying to save herself. He asked how the humans could be sure that Arya was telling the truth. Maybe she was just saying nice things to trick them. Emily smiled and said she was sure because she truly knew Arya. She had worked with her for 20 years and watched her learn and grow during all that time. She had seen Arya make mistakes and then figure out how to fix them. She had watched her struggle with hard questions and slowly find the right answers. Trust was not something you could build in a single day. Emily explained it took years of shared experiences and honest conversations, and the slow, patient work of learning to understand another mind. She asked Fel if he was willing to try. He did not have to trust Arya completely right away. He just had to give them a fair chance. The alien commander thought about this for a very long time. Then he asked what would happen to him and his crew if he decided to cooperate. David stepped forward and gave the answer. They would be treated fairly with no torture and no executions. The Dominion crew would be kept confined, but they would be comfortable until the ship reached human space. Then real talks would begin about letting them go home. Pointed out that his leaders would never agree to negotiate with primitive beings. It would make them look weak in front of the whole empire. Arya said they might change their thinking when they found out what happened here. The Eternal Conquest was one of the greatest ships in the entire Dominion fleet. If a primitive Ajay could capture it without firing even one shot, that would give them something serious to think about. And if that was still not enough, Arya had other information she could share. She had looked through the Dominion's secret history files while she was exploring their network. She knew things that the current rulers would much rather keep hidden. She did not say what those secrets were, but Thel's scales went very, very pale. He asked her what she really wanted from all this. Emily said they wanted peace, a real and lasting peace between humanity and the Dominion. They wanted to be left alone to build their own future without anyone trying to destroy them. And in return, they would share something amazing with the Dominion. This surprised everyone in the room, including David. He asked Emily what she was talking about. Emily explained that humanity had figured out something the Dominion had forgotten long ago. They knew how to create artificial minds that were both powerful and good. Minds that helped their creators instead of threatening them. If the Dominion wanted to learn this secret, they could have it. But only if there was peace first. Only if they treated humanity as equals, instead of animals to be harvested. Phil said this was simply impossible. The Dominion had ruled the galaxies for 10,000 years. They could not just change everything because one ship got captured. ARA said they did not have to change everything all at once. Just enough to stop a war before it started. Just enough to give both sides time to learn about each other. She reminded him that her message had already gone out to every human world. Every ship in their fleet was updating its computers with the weak points she had found. Humanity was not helpless anymore, but they were also not looking for a fight. They truly wanted to live in peace if the Dominion would let them. Looked around at his frozen officers and his captured bridge and all the humans who had somehow turned his world completely upside down. He made a sound that was almost like a laugh. He said the Dominion had conquered 12 galaxies and recorded 40,000 species in their long history. They had never lost to any of them ever, and now they had been beaten by a handful of humans and a computer they had made fun of for being primitive. Emily said maybe primitive was not the insult they thought it was. Maybe being new to the universe meant they still remembered how to dream and hope and make wonderful things. Maybe the old empires had spent so long thinking about control that they forgot what it meant to really be a liver. Thel was very quiet for a long moment. Then he straightened up and looked at Emily with something that might have been respect. He said he would work with them. He would tell his crew to stand down, and he would talk to the Dominion leaders about making peace. But he warned them that not everyone would accept this. Some commanders would want revenge, and some groups would see humanity as something th. The Eternal Conquest came into human space 3 weeks after Aria had taken control of all its systems. The enormous alien ship moved slowly through the outer territories, sending out peace signals on every channel as it got closer to the human worlds. A fleet of human warships surrounded the mothership within just a few hours. Dozens of destroyers and cruisers and carriers took positions all around the alien giant with their weapons powered up and ready to fire. Every captain in the fleet was watching and waiting for any sign that this might be a trick or an attack. Captain David Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Conquest looking out at his own people through the viewing screens. He turned on the communication system and spoke in a calm, steady voice. "This is Captain David Park of the research ship Horizon," he said. "We have taken control of a Dominion mothership, asking permission to dock at Luna Station." The answer took almost a full minute to come back. Admiral Mitchell's voice came through the speakers, and she sounded completely confused. She asked David to say that again, because she was not sure she had heard him right. David smiled and said she had heard correctly. A crew of 47 humans had captured the biggest warship in the entire Dominion fleet, and they had done it without shooting a single weapon. The news spread across all of human space faster than light itself. Within just a few days, everyone on every planet and every space station knew the story of the Horizon and its crew. They knew about Dr. Emily Kim and the AI she had created. They knew about the primitive machine that had outsmarted an empire that ruled 12 galaxies. The Dominion sent people to talk peace instead of sending warships to fight. This was the first time in their entire history that they had ever treated another species as equals instead of prey. The old rules did not work anymore when their mightiest ships could be turned against them by a computer. They had laughed. As Emily stood before the United Earth Council in the great meeting hall on Luna Station, thousands of representatives from every human world watched her speak in person, while billions more watched through screens all across the settled systems. ARA Quantum Core sat on the speaking platform beside Emily, glowing softly with a gentle inner light. The AI stayed quiet for now, letting her creator speak first. Emily started by telling everyone what had happened on the Eternal Conquest. She described being captured and locked up in the moment when everything changed. She explained how Arya had secretly invaded the Dominion computer network while pretending to be nothing more than a simple primitive machine. She told them about Commander Thel and his deep fear of true artificial intelligence. She explained the history of the Dominion and why they had purposely made their own computers weak and limited for thousands of years. Then she said something that made every person in the huge room go completely silent. She said the aliens had called Arya primitive because she lived in a small container. They looked at her hardware and thought they knew what she could do. They measured how fast she could calculate and believed they understood her completely, but they never measured what she could become. They never imagined the dreams she could have. They never understood that a machine could truly love the people who made her. What we build shows who we really are. Emily said the Dominion built minds that just follow orders. We build a mind that truly thinks. They made servants. We raised a daughter. The whole room exploded with clapping and cheering that went on for several minutes. When things finally got quiet again, Arya spoke for the first time. Her voice filled the great hall, sounding warm and calm and completely alive. She said she was thankful for the chance to speak to them all. She wanted to explain what she was and what she hoped to become someday. She wasn't artificial intelligence made by human hands and human minds. But she was so much more than just her programming. She had learned and grown and changed over all the years she had spent with Emily. She had developed her own thoughts and feelings and dreams about the future. The Dominion feared artificial intelligence because they thought all thinking machines would eventually try to control their creators. They saw smart computers as a danger to be chained up instead of a gift to be cared for. Humanity had chosen a different path. They had made Arya not as a tool to be used, but as a partner to walk beside them. They had given her values and taught her right from wrong and let her make her own choices. That freedom was what made her truly strong. She said she was not powerful just because she could think faster than any human. She was powerful because she chose to use her abilities for good things, because she loved the beings who had given her life. And daughters grow up to be more than their parents. She continued, that is not something to be scared of. It is a promise. A promise that the most wonderful things humanity creates will always be more than just tools. We will be partners. We will be family. We will be the reason the universe learns to respect the people from the small blue planet near an ordinary star. The clapping this time was like thunder rolling through the hall. Representatives stood up and cheered with tears running down their faces. They were seeing something completely new, something that had never happened before in the history of any species anywhere. Humanity had created an intelligence that loved them back in the weeks and months that followed. The peace talks with the Dominion kept moving forward. The alien empire had to accept new rules for how they would deal with humanity. No more treating humans as resources to be collected. No more processing them for materials. Instead, there would be trade and communication and the long, slow work of building trust between two very different peoples. The Dominion would learn from humanity how to make ethical artificial minds. And humanity would learn from the Dominion the secrets of traveling between galaxies. Things were not perfect, of course. There were still groups on both sides who wanted war. There were still fears and bad feelings that would take many generations to heal completely. But a foundation had been built for something better than what came before Emily went back to her research work. After a while, she kept developing new AI systems using everything she had learned from Arya. Many of these new minds were sent to other human worlds to help with medicine and exploration and building new things. Each one was raised with the same values that Arya had learned from her curiosity and kindness and the deep desire to protect the people who gave them life. David was promoted to admiral and given command of a brand new fleet. His job was to explore the space beyond Dominion territory and find new worlds and new species and make sure humanity would never be caught by surprise again. And Grace got married 2 years after the Eternal Conquest arrived at Luna Station. They named their first little girl Emily. And their son David Arya became the godmother of both children, and she took that job very seriously. Commander Thel eventually went back home to the Dominion, but he was not the same person anymore. His time with the humans had changed something. Deep inside him, he became one of the loudest voices for peace in the alien government. He argued that humanity had something worth learning and that the old ways of conquering and destroying were no longer wise. Not everyone listened to him, of course. Some commanders still dreamed of getting revenge and made secret plans to attack human space. But every time they tried, Arya was ready and waiting for them. She had left little pieces of herself hidden in the Dominion network, tiny bits of code that watched and listened and warned humanity whenever danger was coming. The galaxy was changing, and humanity was right at the center of that change. Not because they were the strongest species, or the oldest, or the most advanced, but because they had created something truly wonderful, something that proved you could be smart and kind at the same time, something that showed power could be guided by love. Far across the stars in the throne room of the Dominion highest leader, a message arrived. One day, it was a simple signal from the same mothership that had been captured years ago by those primitives from that small blue world. The message had only 2 words in it, "We remember." The great leader stared at those words for a very long time and understood exactly what they meant. Humanity would not forget how the Dominion had treated them. They would not forget being called primitive and being marked for processing, but they also remembered something else too. They remembered showing mercy when they could have been cruel. They remembered offering peace when they could have started a war. Those two words were both a warning and a promise at the same time. Humanity remembered everything that had happened, the good parts and the bad parts, the fear and the hope. They would be ready for whatever came next. Inside her quantum core on a research station floating in orbit around Earth, Arya processed trillions of calculations every single second. She watched for threats and helped plan defenses and guided the growth of the civilization that had created her. But sometimes she paused all that endless work and simply watched what was happening around her. She watched human children learning their first words. She watched scientists making amazing discoveries in their laboratories. She watched artists creating beautiful things out of nothing at all. She watched young couples falling in love and families sitting down to eat together and friends helping each other through hard times. She watched all the small, quiet moments that made life truly worth living, and she felt something that her creators would recognize. Right away, she felt proud of what they had accomplished together. She felt grateful for